Alrighty, hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who don't know me, I am Cryptic Coil, and in today's video, I am going to do a book review on Lois Duncan's book, Stranger with My Face. Okay, now I actually own 3 copies of this book with different covers. This is a hardback book with a dust jacket. It's actually in really rough shape, but when I saw it at the thrift store for less than $2, I couldn't help myself. Then I have this very vintage copy, okay, and this is from the early 80s, and I think this is a second printing, if I'm not mistaken. And this one was printed by Dell Fiction, and I really enjoy picking up these vintage Dell Fiction paperbacks. This one was printed by or published by Little Brown. Okay, and then I own a third copy, and this is the one that I read, but I have it on loan right now. I loaned it out to a coworker. But you see this copy of Killing Mr. Duncan. Well, the copy of Stranger with My Face that I read had a very similar cover. It was a laurel leaf published printing. But that's the one that I actually read. And I wish I had that one handy, but unfortunately my coworker has it right now. And she said that's going to be the next book she reads. But anyway, let me go ahead and get into this book review of Stranger with My Face. Now, I'm going to go ahead and read the taglines and the synopses on both books. Now, this hardback copy that I have does not have a tagline on the front, and the synopsis is on the inner dust jacket. So let me go ahead and start reading that to you. For Lori, it had been a wonderful summer, sun-drenched and full of romance. And then the terror began. At first, she gets the creepy sensation that someone is spying on her, lurking on the path to the rambling house in which Lori lives with her parents, even entering her bedroom when she isn't there. Then her boyfriend breaks off with her. He says he saw her embracing another boy, but Lori knows it wasn't she. Next, 2 of her friends avoid her because they say that she was rude to them. Lori again denies the charges. She begins to fear what is happening to her. Are her friends plotting against her? Is she going crazy? Her worst fears are soon realized and surpassed. So, I want you to notice that there are 2 girls on the cover. And I don't know if you can tell or not because they're wearing different colored shirts. But Lori is the one in the pink, and then the one in the mirror, it's her reflection. But she's wearing black to symbolize evil and darkness. Then you kind of have a similar theme going on here on this cover. Okay, so you see Lori, and she's looking at herself in the mirror, and she actually looks frightened, but her reflection looks not unfrightened. In fact, her reflection looks kind of chipper. So why does the real Lori look frightened, but the reflection looks so gleeful and giddy? Okay. Now the tagline on the front of this copy reads, "Is Lori going crazy, or has her nightmare become a reality?" And on the back, the synopsis reads, "The start of the summer is perfect for Lori. Going with Gordon has won her friends in the best crowd. Then suddenly, things change. Lori is haunted by the feeling that someone is spying on her, lurking around the house and yard, even when entering her bedroom when she isn't home. When Gordon breaks up with her, when Gordon breaks up with her, claiming he has seen her with another guy, Lori knows he is wrong, but she can't prove it. Her friends report that they have seen her doing things she knows she has never done. Lori is confused and frightened. Are her friends plotting against her? Is she going crazy? Who or what is this other being who is trying to take over her life? Okay, so now I'll jump into kind of my book review, and I'm just going to kind of elaborate a little bit on those synopses and taglines. So Laurie Stratton is the main character. She's 17 years old. She lives on this island called Brighton Island that's off the coast of the New England area of the United States. The Stratton family lives in a mansion on the edge of a cliff on the island, and the locals call her house Cliff House. Now, I have a vintage young adult horror book called Cliff House or something like that, and I'm wondering if there's some kind of connection there. I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. Her father, Mr. Stratton, is a very successful science fiction writer, and her mother, Mrs. Stratton, is a very successful artist. She paints pictures. Now, Lori has an 11-year-old brother named Neil, and apparently Neil inherited his mother or their mother's artistic skills. So he's kind of a little artist himself. And then she has an 8-year-old little sister named Megan, and apparently Megan inherited the father's writing skills. So the book opens up with Lori introducing herself. She describes the island and island life. She describes her family and her friends, and she begins in the first chapter to talk about how there's some kind of a presence, this non-corporeal entity that only she can sense, that had been living with her and watching her and slowly trying to take over her life. Lori briefly mentions that the presence of this entity has caused her problems with her family over the course of this last year. And now that it's all over and behind her, she plans to leave it all behind right after high school. So she plans on moving away from the island and just getting away from home, because home is now going to be synonymous with the memories of everything that she had to endure during the time that she had the presence of this entity in her life. Okay. Then she starts to indicate that the entity became hostile towards her, which is very true. Okay, so as alluded to in the synopsis of both editions that I read aloud, Lori began to go steady with a boy named Gordon, and in going steady with him, because see, Gordon came from a well-to-do family. He was a handsome boy, so he was very well integrated into the social fabric of the island. And when Lori got to go steady with him, she got to be part of the in crowd because Gordon was part of the in crowd, and she got to sit at the cool kids table and hang out with all the pretty popular people. Then eventually Gordon says that he saw her out on the town with some other boy, and that friends of his saw it too, so he breaks up with her. And then his friends that she'd been hanging out with too for the last couple of months, they decided to choose sides and remain loyal to Team Gordon, and eventually Lori was kind of outcasted. So Lori, she has other friends. She has a best friend. I forgot what her name was, but she has her. And then there's a boy named Jeff Rankin, and he's kind of a troubled soul. He was a very handsome boy, and he was raised by a rich father, single father, who had to work a lot but made a lot of money. And so Jeff pretty much got whatever he wanted. He had a sports car, he had a motorcycle, he wore a leather jacket. And because he didn't get that much parental attention and affection, but he was kind of compensated in materiality, he was kind of a bad boy, and he wore a leather jacket, that kind of thing. Well, he got into some sort of auto accident and disfigured his face. And this really affected him because before the accident, he was a handsome boy who had all this confidence. And then when his face became disfigured, it changed the way he felt about himself, the way he saw himself, and the way he carried himself. And it also affected the people around him because people felt sorry for him, and it was unsettling to have to see that and be like, oh man, you used to be so handsome. And so people became kind of avoidant of him. It's not that anybody was ever mean to him or went out of their way to be like, haha, look at your face. But it caused division between him and the people in his life. But he and Lori were good friends. And he's also very vital to the story. So this entity eventually begins to display an ability to manifest as Lori and take Lori's form. And this apparition of Lori causes conflicts between her and her family, especially when it leads to Lori discovering secrets about her own past and her own family, because there's a reason why this entity is there. And when Lori begins to try to find out what's going on, it leads to her discovering some secrets about her family and her own past that her parents never told her about. And that causes further problems than the problems that the entity was already causing for her and her family. And then when this apparition of Lori takes Lori's form, Lori's friends begin to get hurt and end up in the hospital. Or they end up in dangerous situations that could have ended up a lot worse had it not merely been for good luck that prevented it from being as bad as it otherwise could have been. Okay, so I think that that's really all I'm going to say as far as the details that I'm willing to provide about the story. And then I'm going to go ahead and give you my rating of this book and the story. And out of 5 stars, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, I am going to give this book 5 stars. I issued this book a 5-star rating. And I know that that probably sounds generous, but it's really not. Lois Duncan was a fantastic writer, and this was a very good story that I really enjoyed reading, and I could not wait to find out what happens next. So I give it 5 stars. This is the second ever Lois Duncan book that I've read. I've also read Killing Mr. Griffin in high school, and that's a book that I plan on rereading very soon. So I just really enjoyed it. What else do I want to say before I let you go? Okay, if you've never read this book before, I strongly discourage you from going onto other people's YouTube channels and watching and listening to their reviews of this book. And the only reason why, and it's not because I'm being competitive and I don't have that much of a YouTube following, okay? I'm not in competition with anybody, okay? I'm just some dude with a couple of viewers and subscribers. I mean, I have less than 100 subscribers, okay? I'm not trying to take views and subscriptions away from other YouTubers. I promise. I promise. It's just that I watched other people do book reviews on this recently before I started to film this, and they gave away more spoilers than what I wanted to give away. Because I think that I wanted to give you just enough to compel you and intrigue you to read it without spoiling it for you. And so that's the only reason why. Okay, now the next thing that I'm gonna tell you is that there is a movie. They did make Stranger with My Face into a movie. They made it sometime between 2008 and 2011, and it was a made for the Lifetime channel TV movie. And even though it was, a Lifetime channel TV movie, they did release it on DVD. I have seen it on eBay before. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon as well. I don't shop on Amazon all that much. I use eBay primarily. Also, somebody managed to upload the movie onto their own YouTube channel for free. So as long as you have the YouTube app, you can watch it. Just type in Lois Duncan Stranger with My Face movie. It's over an hour long, so you'll know which video will have the movie. And you don't have to have YouTube Premium or anything like that. If you don't have YouTube Premium, you'll probably have to watch the ads throughout the course of the movie, but, hey, whatever. Now, I do strongly discourage you from watching the movie if you have not read the book. There are some differences between the book and the movie, but by the end of the movie, you'll look back and say, even though there were some differences, it was pretty much the same story. Some of the differences in the movie compared to the book are the fact that in the first 5 minutes of the movie, Laurie's father dies. He does not die in the book. I think that they did that just to add a little bit more story to the movie. But yeah, her father dies in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and then her and her mother and her little sister try to cope with the death of their father throughout the rest of the movie. Even though that both of her parents were alive and well throughout the whole book. And then in the book, she had a little brother named Neil, but they didn't really have any use for him in the movie, so they just wrote him off. And she only had a little sister named Megan. The mother, or Laurie's mother, was played by the same woman who played the mother in Seventh Heaven. And I forgot who the actress was that played Laurie, but, she looks kind of like Taylor Swift to me. And I know that she's done some other things. I just don't remember what they were, don't remember the actress's name, but I think that she did a fairly good job. And the boy that played Jeff Rankin, the one that got into the auto accident who disfigured his face, the actor that they got to play him looked exactly the way I pictured him when I read the book. When I read the book, I had this mental image of a guy and what he looked like. And then when I watched the movie, I was like, oh my gosh, that looks exactly the way I pictured him. It was uncanny, and that was actually pretty cool. But it was a low budget, movie, but it was still pretty good. Another thing that they changed up in the movie was that, remember, in the book, Laurie's father was a science fiction writer, and it was her mother who was the artist that sold paintings. Well, in the movie, her father, who died, in the first 5 minutes, he wasn't a science fiction writer. He was the artist that supported his family with the paintings. So that was just another thing that they changed for the movie for whatever reason. I think that it would have been really cool if a big Hollywood studio, someone more someone bigger with more marketing ability and, you know, a bigger budget, you know, could have made this into a movie that could have been shown in theaters. I think that they could have made a really terrific movie, but as far as like made for TV channel movies go, this was pretty darn good. It really was. So I do recommend the movie, but I strongly think you should read the book first because the book was even better. I do believe that there was kind of a moral to the story, and I do want to talk about that. But before I get into like my final thoughts, because I already gave it a 5-star rating, something that I thought was really cool. Remember, Lois Duncan lived right here where I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and for those of you who don't know, Lois Duncan, I think it was in the late 80s, early 90s. I think it was the late 80s, like 88 or 89. One of her daughters was actually murdered in cold blood, sitting in her car in traffic. And she even wrote a book about it called Who Killed My Daughter. And she never did find out who killed her daughter. The man who killed her daughter has since turned himself in, and he's in prison now. But she was hoping to find the identity of her daughter's killer before she passed away. And she passed away in like what, 2014, 2016, somewhere in that time frame. And I actually know people in town who are friends with Lois Duncan's daughter. But I never got to meet Lois Duncan or her family or anything like that. But I live in the same city where Lois Duncan lived. And even though this story took place in the New England area, on some island off the coast, New Mexico was actually mentioned quite a few times in this book, which is cool because, you know, that's my home. And so I live in Albuquerque, and so did Lois Duncan while she was alive. So Gallup, New Mexico was mentioned. Now, I don't really like Gallup. Gallup is a couple hours away from where I live. It's a really small town, there's not a whole lot there. But my dad used to have a job where he would have to travel across the state sometimes. And I remember one time when I was in sixth grade, he came and picked me up after lunch at school, and it was totally unplanned, unexpected. And he said, "Hey, I have to go do a job in Gallup today, and I was just wondering if you wanted me to pull you out of school and take you with me." And I was like, "Yeah, that would be cool." So it was cool that she mentioned Gallup, New Mexico, and then she also mentioned Albuquerque, New Mexico, and she mentioned Sandia High School in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now, I lived in Albuquerque twice in my life. Once was a couple of years in elementary school, and then we moved away, we moved out of state. Then we moved back while I was in high school. Now, when I was in elementary school, a lot of those kids that I went to elementary school with went on to go to Sandia High School. And when we moved back to Albuquerque, I like begged my parents to find a house in the Sandia district because I knew that I would at least be able to reconnect with kids from elementary school and maybe pick up where we left off and have some friends. And that didn't happen. I ended up having to move to a different school district and go to a high school where I didn't know anybody. But I did, when I moved back during high school, I did manage to reach out to some kids that I remembered from elementary school who remembered me. And they went to Sandia High. And so over the weekends, I would hang out with my friends from Sandia High School. And so that was, and I live super close to Sandia High School right now. So it was just really cool that that was mentioned as well. And I went to work, and that's why I loaned this book out, the one with a cover more like that. So I actually have a couple of people from work who want to read that book now. So yeah. And then lastly, I want to talk about my takeaway from this book because I believe that it had a moral. I believe that what the moral spoke to, it spoke to jealousy and how dangerous jealousy and envy are, and how it can poison you and contaminate your soul. It really can. And so I wrote some thoughts down, and I'll go ahead and just read them out loud, and then I'll speak a little bit more to it before I let you go. It's best not to envy what others have. It's certainly also best not to steal from others out of jealous spite. Rather than spending your time and energy trying to destroy what someone else has, build something of your own. When destruction is motivated by envy, in the end, we will only destroy ourselves. And that was my takeaway from this book. Okay. Uh, something else that I can tell you is that the entity in this book that was hurting Lori, this entity was jealous of her and the life that she had, and really tried to take it away from her. And let me just tell you a little story about my parents. My parents grew up poor, very poor. So poor that like my mother never even ate at McDonald's until she was 13 years old. There were times she told me where she only got to eat at school, and she was in some program where they used to send food with her home. So over the weekend. Okay, so yeah, poor. And then her and my father, they had me when they were very young, very young. And so they got started like ridiculously young, having kids like with me. And I remember there were times when I was like real little, like 3, 4, 5 years old. And my family, like, my parents, myself, and my baby brother would be in the car. We'd be at a red light, and some young man around my parents' age, late teens, early 20s, would pull up next to us at a red light. And he'd be in a sports car, like a Mustang, a Corvette, Firebird, Camaro, whatever. And I remember my dad would just sit there and look at him and be like, his parents bought him that car because, no one ever gave them stuff. And I just remember, like, looking back on that, I just feel like that's not a good look. So it's not a good look, but to feel that way and to express it. But then when it motivates you to act, when it motivates you to destroy what someone else has, in the end, you will only destroy yourself. Okay, you cannot let jealousy and envy poison you and contaminate your soul. Because once it contaminates your soul, you're no good. Like you're evil. And that's kind of what happened in this story. And I think it does happen in real life. Maybe not in the paranormal way that it was told in this story, but I've seen other things. This was just kind of a small little example to show you how small it can start. And it can ruin you. It can ruin your relationships. It can cause you to stray from the course that you were meant to be on to achieve the things that you need to achieve for yourself, and distract you by plotting destruction against someone else, causing you to steal from other people, and the trouble that could lead you into. And I know that probably sounds preachy, but that was my takeaway based on my understanding of the story and the things I've seen in my own life. But I'll leave you with that. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought. Have you read the book? If so, do you also give it 5 stars? Have you seen the movie? did you agree with my analysis of the movie? Yeah, that's about it. All right, thanks for watching. Horns up. Peace out.